Hey guys, just a quick note before we start the show here. I had to run a space heater to try to keep warm while filming the on-camera segment, so when you hear this giant whirring in the background, that's what's going on there. Again, kind of sorry in advance, but again, I had to try to keep warm if you heard anything of my wayward heating adventures this week. So yeah, try to keep it out. I try to talk over it as best I can, so hopefully it's not too bad. All right, on with the show.
The history of overtly humorous superhero comics is long and varied, but not exactly well remembered. Case in point, many of the readers of the modern-day Harley Quinn books have been referring to her as DC's Deadpool.
The funny part of that is when Deadpool was taking his irreverent turn in the mid-90s, he was considered to be Marvel's answer to the DC character we're covering today, Ambush Bug. Yet the antics of Ambush Bug were eerily similar to those of Marvel's Howard the Duck.
Not to mention there are characters like Plastic Man, Gru the Wanderer, Cerebus the Aardvark, both of those were Conan the Barbarian parodies. Cerebus' supporting character, the Roach, and of course the Tick, all of which brought uniquely humorous twists to the superhero genre.
Getting back to Ambush Bug, the character debuted in 1982 as a Bugs Bunny-esque antagonist for Superman who followed the Man of Steel around incessantly, even going as far as to poke the big hole in the persona of Clark Kent. The character proved popular enough they eventually received several miniseries throughout the rest of the 80s, giving him something of a backstory.
The most commonly accepted, though not entirely possibly accurate, origin for Ambush Bug is that an alien wardrobe was ejected from the doomed planet of Schwab before it came into contact with a radioactive cosmic spider, allowing all of the clothes inside to gain sentience. The Ambush Bug suit then came into contact with an Earthling named Erwin R. Schwab, and turning him into Ambush Bug permanently. Either that or Erwin Schwab is just severely delusional.
Throughout his adventures, Ambush Bug has dealt with DC Comics continuity cop Joni DC, his abandoned fellow wardrobe mates being led by a sock named Argyle, and he's even picked up a sidekick in the form of a plush figure named Cheeks. Heck, Ambush Bug even went as far as to join the Justice League during the 52 weekly series.
In 2008, Ambush Bug would get another miniseries, this time exploring several of the recent storyline events in the DC Universe that would wind up having an effect in some bizarrely tragic ways. And that's what we're looking at today. This is Ambush Bug, Year None.
It's a rainy night in Chicago and an emergency call goes out. Unfortunately, thanks to DC editorial, there's no backup available and Joni DC has been murdered. Though there are plenty of qualified detectives in the DC universe, they're all really busy right now, meaning Ambush Bug must take up the case, though not before purchasing a refrigerator that hopefully doesn't have a woman's dismembered corpse inside.
Joni DC was a character from Ambush Bug's original miniseries that constantly harangued him as she was a continuity cop and he was always violating canon. Now, she's actually the female counterpart of a former DC mascot from the 60s and 70s named Johnny DC, who had actually recently returned around this time to become the mascot for DC's All Ages line.
Ambush Bug travels to Chicago where several other women of the DC universe have been killed, mostly Joni's relatives. At first, he's not even sure what he sees is actually Joni DC's body as she's changed her logo, which naturally makes Bug nauseous. He then heads back home where the narratorial caption box reminds him of Joni's role of guarding continuity in the DC universe. So Ambush Bug begins hopping around looking for help. Superman, Batman, and the Justice League are all busy, and then he gets to the Teen Titans where the hormonal situation just makes him even sicker. It's then that Ambush Bug remembers that Sue Dibney, wife of Ralph Dibney the Elongated Man, asked Ambush Bug to help plan a surprise party for Ralph's birthday. To that end, Ambush Bug calls Jean Loring to try to coordinate, only to find out that she wasn't invited to the party, and that she hasn't been invited to any DC Universe function since she divorced Ray Palmer, aka the Atom.
And hopefully nothing bad will possibly come of that.
Meanwhile, high above Earth's orbit, Argyle and his other sentient articles of clothing begin to monitor Ambush Bug's every move. They still seek revenge for the suit abandoning them and retell Argyle's origin as he dons a metal mask. Ambush Bug attends Joni DC's funeral in the Cayman Islands, which was paid for by the Green Team. Team member Cecil Sunbeam explains he'll do what he can to help Ambush Bug in solving Joni's murder. However, he can't go too in-depth as to what exactly Haldeman has to do with any of this, or who Haldeman is for that matter. Cecil then spends the next 3 weeks explaining that Haldeman is Cecil's stepfather and has absolutely nothing to do with Joni's death. As more women begin dying in the background, Cecil refers Bug to his green teammate Abdul Smith. Smith in turn points out that Yankee Poodle has popped up, seemingly clean and sober after having kicked a dog biscuit addiction.
We touched a little bit on the history of the Green Team back when I covered a series called The Movement on the Random Trade Review. In a nutshell, it's just a group of young, wealthy adventurers who go around spending their money wisely, as all wealthy men do. Not. Yes, this was a time when you could still sell a premise like that. Now, moving on to Yankee Poodle, she was part of a group called Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew. This was a parallel universe where the JLA were all anthropomorphized animals, and she was obviously analogous to Wonder Woman and responsible for a whole lot of furry awakenings.
Ambush Bug questions Poodle, only getting an FU in response, which in turn sends him to Shang-Su, who refers Ambush Bug to Ace the Bat Hound, who brings up Sugar but not Spike, who then points towards Amazing Man. This all leads to the Glop, which is where everything comes to a halt, mainly thanks to the Glop's overwhelming stench.
Okay, we've got a lot to go through here, so be careful. Shang-Su is a Chinese communist spy who happens to be in the form of a giant egg who would often battle Wonder Woman throughout the 60s and 70s. He is often regarded as one of the most overtly offensive comic book villains of all time, which is why I'm using his more politically correct name and not the one you would normally find him under. Ace the Bat Hound, on the other hand, was Batman's canine sidekick throughout the 50s and 60s, though he still sometimes pops up in the modern day on occasions. Sugar and Spike were a pair of toddler characters in a humor book DC put out. They would often speak to each other in a language that was only discernible by them and not by adults, not entirely dissimilar from the animated series Rugrats. Last but certainly not least, we have Amazing Man, who is basically a guy who constantly kept winning the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes and thus earned enough wealth to just become his own superhero where he'd go around performing menial tasks like unclogging drains and painting fences and the like. By the way, we're still in the middle of issue 1 here.
It's then that Argyle launches his attack to absolutely no effect. This leaves the Sock no other choice but to bring in some hired muscle in the form of swinging 60 themed villain Go-Go Checks and his accomplice Saki Tomi. The next thing Ambush Bug knows, he's trapped in a groovy checker-patterned universe where Batgirl Betty Kane arrests him for triggering Jean Loring. Claiming to be the child of Sue Dibney and the Phantom Stranger, Batgirl attacks in the name of all women until she's crushed to death by a falling dead woman being shoved on top of her. Eventually, Ambush Bug just realizes that the checkerboard pattern is just a large tent and collapses it. He then returns home lamenting to Cheeks that he couldn't solve Joni DC's murder.
Well, we finally managed to hit issue 2.
Shocked by the recent revelation of JLA mind-wiping, Ambush Bug seeks solace in the Tibetan Sindhi of Nanda Parbat. He stops off at the monastery to pray, only for Groucho Marx to appear to push Bug into abandoning his dream of being a superhero and follow his real dream of being a space ranger in the 22nd century. Also, Cheeks gets turned into an OMAC as Bug teleports out. Ambush Bug arrives on a planet of humanoid equestrians who are expecting the Flash. The people there are under the oppressive thumb of Don Gay Apparel, the Mauve Lantern. Added to that, Go-Go Checks has tailed Ambush Bug to the planet and convinced a youngster named Zook to become a suicide bomber. The Mauve Lantern explains that he's actually the herald of a massive gay stereotype known as Mr. Nebula, who arrives shortly after Zook's attack fails. There's not really much Ambush Bug can do, as the planet is soon turned into a pony wonderland.
I know what you're thinking, and no, this really doesn't have anything to do with bronies at all. This came out a couple of years before that subculture really took off. Also, along the way, we got introduced to Ambush Bug's manga counterpart, Mitsubishi. Do you get it?
Several villains beat up Mitsubishi for his money before he's rescued by the Butane Lighter Corps, who valiantly give their life after actually realizing they set their lighter off in a gas-filled room. Though tasked with finding a new wielder, the lighter goes on a drug-fueled binge throughout the cosmos. This coincides with Ambush Bug returning to a destroyed Earth and turning into the Angry Bear. Angry Bear soon goes on a massive attack, only to be halted by the sight of a picnic basket. From there, Ambush Bug decides to ask his favorite hero, Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, for assistance and an autograph, only to witness Beetle's death at the hand of Maxwell Lord. The next thing Ambush Bug knows, he's in Vegas waking up next to a blonde woman who's naked, with no clothes on. It turns out that this is Dumb Bunny from the Inferior 5, or should I say, Mrs. Ambush Bug. He flips out and tries using a shower to duck out for his escape while she still takes things in stride.
The Inferior Five were a parody of the Fantastic Four, who in storyline were the offspring of a Justice League-like group called the Freedom Brigade. Dumb Bunny was the child of the Freedom Brigade's version of Wonder Woman named Princess Power, and though Dumb Bunny is super strong, it was thought that she wasn't really that intelligent. Though this would actually turn out to be a ruse, as Dumb Bunny, real named Althena Tremor, was actually the daughter of a college professor and learned a lot from him, though she acted dumb mostly to bolster the confidence of the Inferior Five's leader, Merryman.
Desperate to get out of this marriage, Ambush Bug begins traveling throughout the newly restored multiverse to find an attorney that can get him out of those famously binding Vegas marriage licenses. A planet of Omax turns up nothing, as does one of Middle Eastern Omax. Finally, Ambush Bug journeys to the Hell universe run by the demon Neron. When Neron prepares to damn Dumb Bunny's soul to hell, Ambush Bug corrects him and says he doesn't want her damned for eternity. He just wants the marriage annulled. But that's just stupid, so Ambush Bug winds up getting dropped into the maw of morbidity.
Yeah, why on earth would the ruler of a demonic dimension be suddenly interested in ending a superhero's marriage?
Ambush Bug soon finds himself on the Kent farm in Smallville, Kansas with little age Clark Lois, as well as their son who's for some reason been replaced with a super turtle. It turns out they're all figments of Ambush Bug's imagination forced to spend eternity in this limbo dimension, causing Lois to hit the bottle really hard. The Kent's other adopted son, Alexander Luthor, warns Ambush Bug to stay away as the turtle shows off his obsessively creepy Superman room. Then, while the real Superman flies off to take care of some rogue crabgrass, Lois tries putting the moves on Ambush Bug. This makes Ambush Bug warm up to the idea of newlywed life so much that he decides to teleport to the planet of Apocalypse. After a round of karaoke with Darkseid, Bug teleports back to Earth only to find Super Turtle killing the Teen Titans.
Okay, so most of the stuff here in the Limbo Dimension is referencing DC's Infinite Crisis event, though I don't exactly know why they replaced Superboy Prime with Super Turtle. Now, the exception to this is Darkseid. This is actually a reference to the original Ambush Bug miniseries, where the villain was constantly popping up in the cliffhangers of every issue, despite not having anything at all to do with the story.
It's then that Go-Go Checks and Sakitomi appear to take on Ambush Bug one final time in Atlantis, far under the sea. Bug manages to fight his way out and make it back to find Dumb Bunny is bonded with Cheeks, so he decides to settle in and give married life a shot for once.
Yeah, I know I'm skipping over a lot of parts here, but the fact of the matter is we got 3 issues left in this series, and I'm tired of constantly stopping to explain in-jokes. Just know that most of the references from this point on are to Infinite Crisis, the weekly series 52, the other weekly series Countdown, and the upcoming Final Crisis event. Though in reality this is all just being done to make fun of DC executive editor Dan DiDio.
Dan DiDio takes the Ambush Bug creative team to task. He's worked long and hard to try to destroy all the humor in the DC universe, only to change his mind and put it all back by extending Ambush Bug one additional issue. However, DiDio is then killed by a plummeting Ambush Bug. This all worries Mitsubishi, who's feared of being arrested, only to find out that instead Black Adam is being held in question for Dan DiDio's murder. This doesn't stop Bishi from inadvertently destroying a plane and then getting roped in by Argyle to locate the real Ambush Bug. To that end, Mitsubishi is dropped off in a sprays prison where the Burt Ward Robin from the 60s Batman series runs things and orders Ambush Bug to be dealt with. Argyle then continues his search for the real Ambush Bug, getting passed from DC character to DC character and hitting on Renee Montoya. As for Mitsubishi, he escapes back to Earth where a couple of farmers adopt him as a pet for their 12 children. In reality, Ambush Bug, Dumb Bunny, and Cheeks are in town for Dan DiDio's funeral, where he gets jumped by the Ambush Bug Revenge Squad, who want revenge for all the continuity that he's killed. However, the group's constant arguing over what actually constitutes canon allows Bug to just walk away freely. All of this has made Ambush Bug decide to give up the hero game for the more stable life of being a villainous henchman. He gets hired by a polar-themed villain named Yellow Snow, who it turns out is really a monitor in disguise trying to kill Ambush Bug for being a universal variant.
Again, this was a thread in the Countdown Weekly series.
Ambush Bug begins hopping through the multiverse to escape the monitors, landing on a gender-swapped Earth where his female counterpart attempts to smother him with a pillow. Then it's on to the Crime Syndicate Earth and next the Vertigo Earth, which is so full of swear words that he can't understand a word that's being said. However, it's there that he bumps into Dan DiDio, who's now a monitor. It turns out that DiDio attacked himself in order to become the Source Wall and allow himself to become capital of the multiverse. DiDio has been killing characters left and right, which upsets Go-Go Checks, who now can't get paid. This also apparently includes Dumb Bunny, who DiDio kills by possessing Cheeks.
Okay, so at this point there was actually a massive shipping delay, with the inside joke being that Dan DiDio extended this from a 6-issue series to a 7-issue series, though in reality the issue that was labeled 7 was really just issue 6.
A detective meets with a resurrected Joni DC in a bar to discuss what happened in the 6th issue of Ambush Bug. She gives him a few unfinished pages, which unfortunately don't do too much, only for the detective to be caught in a repeating joke of telling the whole story by Joni DC recapping the entire history of the planet Earth. Dan DiDio then turns into the Monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey and blows everyone up. As people around him begin turning into Dan DiDio, Ambush Bug sets out to find his old editor, Jan Jones, who in reality left partway through this series to fix everything. Ambush Bug borrows Rip Hunter's time machine from the 52 series and travels back in time, eventually deciding to just reenact the climactic battle for Matrix Revolutions, only for it to be halted by a product placement for Twinkies. Finally, Ambush Bug gets a pencil of destiny and proceeds to put things back to normal, even Dan DiDio. Meanwhile, Mitsubishi becomes the new Robin, while Ambush Bug elects to leave the DC Universe for now, promising to return when things get fun again.
At least that's what I kind of think happened. I mean, this is the end of the book, so yeah, this is the end of Ambush Bug Year None. How was it? Well, I did think the artwork was really top-notch throughout all of this. It was really fun. It did a good job capturing the absurdist, surrealistic humor of the story. Unfortunately, I think my main problem is the jokes. Now, I got a lot of the jokes. I thought they were funny. It's just, if you were an outsider and you didn't really know much about DC Comics, you wouldn't understand a lick of this. They're a little too inside baseball for any good measure. I mean, this is really a book for diehard DC fans, not for the general public. That's the only way I can describe it. Unfortunately, that's kind of a main drawback when you, say, are trying to recommend books to the general public. So, yeah, that's kind of the main failure of this. I mean, the fact that I was constantly having to stop and explain who characters were, even though they were minorly incidental at most, and having to explain in-jokes and what this was referencing, what this is referencing all the time, it really kind of makes for a disruptive story sometimes. And that being said, it's like, again, kind of hard to keep a narrative flow. Now, I like surrealistic humor. I can get through a lot of stuff like that, but again, it's not necessarily for everyone, and if you aren't into that, you're not really going to like this book at all. So, yeah, if you like surrealistic absurdist humor and you're a big fan of the DC Universe, by all means read this, but as for everyone else, I'm going to have to give Ambush Bug Year None a D. Like I said, it's just too inside baseball for its own good. And with that, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Hey guys, remember you can help support the channel at patreon.com/sleepytimeforcat productions. There you can request a trade to be put in the randomizer, aka the cardboard box. And as always, remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.